want to note about, just before lunch, Mr. White asked Union Hill people to stand, residents who's been working with Dominion, to stand up for community engagement, and I think it was like two dozen people that had stood up that said that they were working with Dominion. So please be aware of their impact, and I have visited their community facility. It's not that I'm just seeing it on paper. I voiced my support for the permit at Buckingham, as I do again today. The compressor station is an essential part of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline project. ACP is urgently needed to help ensure a reliable energy future for the Commonwealth, including Buckingham County. I know that the energy security must not come at the expense of the environment. Our natural resources, including our clean air, make Virginia a great place to live. Our citizens will not stand for anything that puts these resources at risk. I have no such concern about the compressor station. The permit contains strong provisions to protect the quality of our air, standards that rank among the strictest for any compressor station in the United States. The permit is completely accepted to Dominion Energy and is consistent with the company's strong commitment to the environment. I saw this commitment during my career at Dominion Energy. I worked for years in the company's transmission right-of-way acquisition department. I know firsthand that Dominion Energy worked hard and still does to hold the impact of these projects to a minimum, impacting the least number of homes, businesses, historical sites. And they still continue to do the same. Satisfying the concerns of the community, landowners, local governments, and this was part of the permitting work that they did as they chose a line. And this has certainly been the case in Buckingham County. The special use permit issued by the county contains 41 separate conditions that I'm sure you're aware of. The provisions will minimize noise, maintain tree buffers, reduce visual impact, and limit the height of the microwave towers. And this is something that Buckingham citizens are very pleased with, that they contain these items. The air permit even adds more assurances that the station will be built and operated in a safe manner. The emission standards are 4 to 10 times stronger than what the limits are in other recently issued permits.
While Virginia and our members across the state, you've heard a lot today about site suitability and environmental justice and the intersection between the two, and I'm not going to go into great detail. I do want to note that what you've heard today is backed up by a lot of information in the record that you've already been given, that was submitted to DEQ, and on which your decision must be based, as you know. That information says very clearly that the state of Virginia has a responsibility to do a real site suitability analysis, and that information also gives you lots of evidence of the real need, the dire need for such an analysis here in relation to environmental justice. I wanted to refer to part of DEQ's response to comments, in which they discussed the fact that commenters brought up environmental justice and site suitability. And they specifically said that commenters, quote, mixed the concept of environmental justice with the requirements to determine site suitability. Well, of course they did. Of course people tied those two things together. There is no rational or reasonable way to discuss site suitability without looking at the factors that affect that site, and environmental justice is one of those. So that statement, that mere statement, seems to be so dismissive as to be really disturbing. It should show you the depth of consideration that the staff has given that issue, and should convince you that you need to insist on more. Another thing that was in that same paragraph was to say, these folks who are trying to tie these issues together, they didn't acknowledge that this was one of the most stringent permits that they could find in the nation. Okay, but that is not the question here. The question under this part of your responsibility is whether this operation in this place is reasonable, and whether there are economic and social factors that are practically possible to do better, to reduce or eliminate the emissions in this place. That's the question. So you can talk all day long about the fact that the limits are some of the most stringent you can find, or maybe the most stringent, but it does not answer the question that you folks are tasked to answer in deciding whether this permit can go forward. Again, we ask you to deny this permit because it is not backed up with the kind of information and analysis that's required. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your service to the Commonwealth. My name is Jeffrey Dowdell, and I live in Mechanicsville. I strongly support the construction of the Buckingham Compressor Station and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I do so for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this critically needed energy infrastructure will provide affordable, clean energy to Virginians. The natural gas the pipeline will provide to families and businesses is proven to be significantly cleaner than other types of energy resources used in the past, and has been strongly supported by environmental groups as a cleaner alternative for some time. Second, I believe both the construction and operation of the Buckingham Compressor Station and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline together have the opportunity to spur significant economic growth for Buckingham County, as well as the entire Commonwealth. The jobs and economic investments, and specifically in Buckingham County, are critically needed, which is made evident by the overwhelming approval of the local Board of Supervisors to the compressor station. Third, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline has gone through a long, multi-year approval process where it has received the scrutiny and subsequent approval of governments at the federal, state, and local levels. I believe that when this project is completed, all of Virginia will reap the multitude of benefits. Lastly, it's my understanding the Buckingham Compressor Station, while technically classified as a minor source, has pollution limits contained in the draft permit that are far more stringent than other compressor stations recently approved by this body. With all of these points in mind, I respectfully request this permit receive your full support and approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jonathan Sokolow. I'm an attorney, writer, small business owner, and I'm here in Fairfax County where I live to ask you to oppose and vote down this proposed compressor station permit. I think one thing that we all have learned today, which is indisputable, is that Dominion Energy has a very good email list. And they're very good at staying in touch with people who are on their payroll in one form or another. People who are retirees from Dominion, people who receive their pension from Dominion, people who receive their health benefits from Dominion, people who are consultants from Dominion. They even rounded up a couple of politicians who take donations from Dominion. That should not dissuade you from looking at the facts. One thing I think many of us have been struck by here today is that many who spoke in favor are living in something of a fact-free zone. So let me present to you facts that I think are indisputable. Fact number one, the NAACP, this country's oldest and most prestigious civil rights organization, is on record as saying that this compressor station proposed for Union Hill is an example of environmental reason. That's a fact, that's their position. Another fact, Governor McAuliffe issued Executive Order 73 and created the Advisory Council on Environmental Justice to advise executive branch agencies on environmental justice issues. That council unanimously, all 15 members appointed by Governor McAuliffe, called the Union Hill Compressor Station an example of environmental racism. That is a fact. Another fact, sure Mr. Taylor has not informed you of. Yesterday, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected yet another permit for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, put a stay on it, because the Army Corps of Engineers did not do their job in reviewing this project that supposedly has been more stringently reviewed than any other project. And it's wanting a string of permits thrown out for both the Atlantic Coast and the Mountain Valley Pipeline. That is a fact. That happened yesterday, and I'm sure nobody told you that. Another fact, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline Company's Dominion Energy has conceded that they cannot finish this project until mid-2020. So all of these statements that you've heard about how urgent it is for you to approve this, how much of a waste of time it would be to do an environmental study, to do an environmental justice study, to do a health assessment study, those are just lies. Those are just lies. Dominion has admitted, and let me point out, Dominion admitted this 2 weeks ago, that they will not be able to finish the Atlantic Coast Pipeline until mid-2020, and it might be later if there are any other delays. Well, last night there was another delay on the Fourth Circuit. So it may be till 2021 or 2022 before they finish this pipeline. There is plenty of time to do justice to the folks who have traveled here from far and wide to beg that you protect the health of themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. Another fact, and this is one of these fact-free zones that we've been hearing very little about today, the International Panel on Climate Change, which is the United Nations body of the world scientists, issued a report about it several weeks ago, in which they said not just in general that we need to do something about climate change within the next 12 years.
Excuse me. We had a clock issue, but your 3 minutes is up.
I'm just following the clock. Can I just have 30 seconds?
No.
No, I'm sorry. You only have 30 over.
Okay, my name is. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I appreciate your time.
My name is Beth Roach. I live in Richmond. I'm from Surrey County, which was mentioned earlier, so it's free. I've lived through that process of all the induction coal plant being proposed. I'm going to tell you all my hats. So I'm a community organizer for Mothers on the Front. I serve on the Governor's Council of Environmental Justice. I'm a Council of Environmental Justice and Vice Chair. And I'm also a tribal council member of the Nottoway Indian Tribe of Virginia. Now, I'm speaking to you today as an ancestor, and this again, Chairman Mr. Taylor, it's good to see you again. But today, what I'd like for us to just consider is what kind of ancestors are we going to be? And as a Native person, I'm pulling from the Haudenosaunee ancestors who, whenever we would open a meeting, first we would say, whenever we greet each other, and that is, are you at peace? And then we would go through a very long Thanksgiving address, which really details all the things that we're grateful for and how this whole world operates. And we're just going to pull one piece out for us today. And what that says is that today we have gathered to receive the cycles of life continue, and that it is our duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and with the world around us. And so, together as one mind, we give greetings and thanks to each other. So I'm greeting you all, I'm greeting all the ones that are standing behind me. And so when I think about those words, and I think about all the experiences that I've had, this is what I come to. With mothers out front, I work with women across the country, mothers and grandmothers that are waking up to that IPCC report, to the fact that climate action is happening now. And if we ask them, do I stay? They're going to be like, no, you're not at peace, just like a lot of people are in this room. My experiences with the Advisory Council of Environmental Justice, which you heard from Dr. Mary Greenberg this morning, and I hope that you refer back to her comments in the letter that we presented. I hope that you hear that. I hope that you can see us as a resource. We heard the testimonies just like you hear today in Richmond, and then we went to Buckingham, and truly to walk in these shoes and to listen to these people and see how close the disrespect is to the churches in their homes. It's really, it's truly moving, and I think it's something that I hope that you're really going to consider today. So I'm asking you to listen to everyone, to deny this permit, to take into consideration further assessments. I'm asking you to think as an ancestor and think back to the 7 generations of men that were finally given this land, or finally able to live in this land, the ancestors that they have now, and the ancestors that we hope to lead in the future. And so I'm leaving today with the, and supporting, we are all Union Hill, 'cause I think we all are. And I would say if we're ready to invest in it, and ready to get
opportunity. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. This is the 13th Amendment ending slavery, of which my great-great-grandfather was a free slave after the Emancipation Proclamation. 20 years thereafter, he received this plot of land, 25 acres, that Dominion Power is trying to get an easement on right now. I just got a letter in the mail today that came emailed to me, texted to me this morning, that we're in the Western District Court right now because they came and offered an insult of $3,000 pittance to purchase that easement that on our land. Environmental injustice, environmental racism. I fight injustice everywhere in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And there's injustices in the justice system, injustices that lead to our schools being depleted, leads to our communities being bombarded by crime, leads to everything that's unequitable for primarily African Americans. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the law. We are not giving equal protection of the law. 85% of African Americans in Union Hill are not getting that equal protection. I respect Mr. Dow. He came out to us and we gave him a tour of Buckingham, of Union Hill, and I felt his compassion for us. However, in his paperwork, he's not showing that same compassion by doing the necessary studies to determine if it'll be safe in 10 years from now for the residents of Buckingham. He said, well, you have to get the air quality after we build it. I'm confused. At some point, when are we going to have this state? It's Commonwealth of Virginia, but at this point, I'm calling it the uncommonwealth of Virginia, that is not equally for all the people that it represents. If the legislation and the legislators of the Commonwealth of Virginia were to embrace the diversity and the cultures of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we would be number one in the country. They just can't catch that message. You know, we're still practicing Jim Crow laws in the justice system, disenfranchised, marginalized, putting people of color in the back seat, not being able to move us forward, not being able to give us the same qualities of life that other folk get in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's time, folks, please, to make this decision.
The time
Chairman
ran
just said I can have this 3 minutes.
I'm just making sure that you know that the timer did go off.
I didn't hear.
I didn't think you had this way.
So you didn't hear something. So,
Wait, one last sentence.
1 minute?
One last sentence.
All right. So I implore you, please do the next right thing by this. Give the opportunity for the folk of Buckingham, and I know the folk in some factions of it that have caused divisiveness in the African American community, because some of them are going with Dominion Power, are negotiating with them, and I'm okay with that. At what point will we stand up and fight for our rights?
Thank you. And I apologize for the technical.
3 minutes without air for us to survive. 3 minutes. 3 days without water. We can't survive. 3 weeks without food. We cannot survive. How important is the air for us? So I'm Swami Dayananda. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here today as a Buckingham resident and a clergy member of your community. I have been working with Buckingham Union Hill folks for the last 4 years. And I respectfully ask you, the Air Board members, to disapprove the draft air permit for 2 major reasons: health risk and environmental very best to make sure that BCS meets all national regulations and even beyond whenever they could. I truly am thankful for their very best efforts. The problem is that the national standard they work with is not sufficient, according to many experts, to protect the citizens' health fully. Yoga Bell is 5.5 miles away, as you might have heard, from Compressor Station. And according to a study by industry, Kinder Morgan, the air pollution can reach 6 miles. Anecdotally, it can reach up to 15 miles. Yoga Bell has 300 residents, including children, and almost 10,000 annual guests coming. Our breathing practices as yoga practice is a very important practice. So we do care about clean air and of course clean water, clean land. So some of these below points I believe is very new. I don't want to repeat and has not been responded by DEQ in detail. By Dr. Larissa Durska, pediatrician and Physicians for Social Responsibility and New York Concerned Scientists. First point, the national ambient air quality standards used by Virginia DEQ were not created to assess the air quality and safety in a small geographic area with fluctuating emissions. Please take note. 2, health risks from relevant air contaminants receive inadequate treatment. An EPA ATSBR report established that there were levels of exposure around compressor station that raised health concerns. And 3, mixtures of chemicals are released sequentially or together, and their effects are not taken into account fully. Some act synergetically to increase the toxicity level. 4, radioactive waste products are typically removed from the pipeline after what's called digging. How this toxic waste is removed, handled, stored, transported, and disposed of should be made clear to the public related to the health. Secondly, on environmental justice issue, Union Hill, let's face it, which I believe the Union folks understand. In one of the meetings with Dominion staff, with Union Hill residents at the historic Union Hill Baptist Church, a Dominion representative said that he acknowledges that historically America has had reality of environmental injustice to people of color, that he expressed regret that Dominion has been very concerned, preoccupied with the landowners, and did not pay enough attention to communities. And after the meeting, I asked him, so what is your plan for this discriminatory racism that is happening here? After all, Governor's Advisory Council for Environmental Justice did determine that Union Hill faces that. And so he replied, instead of acknowledging either EJ or not EJ, that Dominion just wants to do what is good for Buckingham, which is a good thing. They do want to help Buckingham. But now we hear in the news that this plan has developed into over $5 million of investment for economical development for Buckingham. The news comes on Richmond Dispatch, I believe today, a day before you are scheduled to make the decision. And I trust and hope that this does not influence your decision in any way. In a way, money has a very strong pressure, and it's a little hard to understand what is happening. If you would disapprove the air permit, would they still keep this agreement? I don't know if it is actually signed. If you agree with it, would they still do that too? I would imagine they would. It's a very difficult situation. Why not wait until you have made a decision to offer? I was at the Parliament for World Relations attended by 7,500 people this past week. I met many faith leaders and people of various faiths from Virginia, US, and globally. I want to share with you, how many more minutes do I have? Secure, okay. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your service for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and for your care. My name is Maya Stewart Silver. I grew up in Afton, Virginia, and now live in Crozet, Virginia. I was blessed to grow up surrounded by beautiful, healthy nature, including clean water and air. And I value this for myself, and I value this opportunity for others, such as my neighbor community in Union Hill. I also have a great deal of care for health, well-being, and justice for all people. As many others have expressed as well, there are major health risks for the citizens of Union Hill. It feels very basic to me that before putting anything into action, there needs to be thorough steps taken to make sure that any health risks are assessed and that the local citizens of the area are not becoming victimized by unjust environmental sacrifice from Dominion's action, and this has not been adequately done. Also, I have a deep concern in general about the impact on this primarily African American low-income population that makes up much of Union Hill community. Even just considering placing this compressor station right in the midst of this already marginalized rural community is very disturbing to me. This tendency of Dominion to have this type of environmental impact in historically marginalized communities that often results in disproportionate health risks is a trend that needs to be seriously questioned and examined. And as a Dominion customer, it feels unacceptable for me, as well as other unwanted customers, to contribute financially to this poison, this pollution, and harm against our wills. I know that you on the board have the power to make a choice that could either contribute to environmental and racial injustice, or you can prioritize the health and well-being of people over profit and uphold the underlying values of our country of equality and justice for all. I see this as an important opportunity for all of you on the board to stand up for what is ethical by denying this unjust draft air permit. And thank you again very much for your care and for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Connor Campbell. I have experience in agriculture and now I'm a small business manager in Charlottesville, Virginia. I represent a small collective of pacifist artists as well as a housing collective of 9 people living together in a home that uses 91% less power per capita than the average home in the state of Virginia. And I'm here to suggest that board members agree to decide to not grant permission to build this compressor station. The reasons have been enumerated before me today. We can provide for our needs in this state, in our beautiful state, without Dominion's natural gas. And in fact, I do not believe that they intend to use this pipeline to even provide for the needs of Virginians. And what I don't think has been mentioned today is that this coming Sunday is the 100th anniversary of the signing of the peace treaty that ended World War I. And I believe that The natural gas from the Marcellus Shale Formation is going to be used on the global trading stage to encourage war, and I want the board to remember that many citizens in Virginia stand for peace, and we stand for developing our economy without the use of any additional fossil fuel infrastructure, and we support keeping our rivers and our forests intact. Thank you very much. I hope you make the right decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Paler, Mr. Gooch. Thank you for your time on these marathon days, and thank you for your service to the Commonwealth. My name is Peter Anderson, and I'm with the nonprofit organization Appalachian Voices. We oppose the Buckingham Compressor Station program. I want to respond to DEQ's summary and responses to 3 of the comments I made during the public comment period. These cover the areas related to first, health and safety, second, greenhouse gas emissions, and third, environmental justice as it relates to site suitability. Under Virginia Code 10.1-1307, subsection E that you have in front of you there, as you know, this board must consider the reasonableness of approving a permit for the Buckingham Compressor Station. This section of state law commands that the board, quote, shall consider facts and circumstances relevant to the reasonableness of the activity involved. And then the code lays out 4 elements that you must consider in your analysis of reasonableness. So I don't need to specify those right now. You have the code in front of you, but we're talking about the degree of injury to safety and health, the social and economic value analysis, the site suitability analysis, and a scientific and economic practicality analysis. In responding to DEQ's comment summary, I want to focus on the first 3 of those elements. So regarding the degree of injury to safety and health, we requested in our comments a baseline health impact assessment to determine the true risk to the Union Hill community in Buckingham, particularly for the elderly and very young and those already living with respiratory illnesses. DEQ's comment response dismisses this request as beyond its authority, and staff claims that broad health-based standards set out in federal law and regulations will be sufficient to protect public health. But since you, the board, quote, shall consider the degree of injury to safety and health, I ask, what evidence has the permit applicant or DEQ supplied to you describing the baseline health of the people living in this community and the likely effects on health from the addition of new criteria pollutants in Buckingham? While DEQ's modeling shows the NAAQS will be attained, what study has been conducted to determine the health impacts on the fence line community during startup, shutdown, normal operation, and during blowdowns related to natural gas? To answer this question as commanded by state law, one must have a very specific set of facts about the local population's current health status and the likely impacts from the higher pollutant concentrations resulting from the compressor station's operation. I submit that this board does not have the information necessary to determine the character and degree of injury to health that is threatened by the Buckingham Compressor Station. Point number 2, regarding the social and economic value of permitting the compressor station to operate, this board must consider, among other things, that the Buckingham Compressor Station is expected to emit 295,686 tons of carbon equivalent per year. For context, this is approximately 1/3 of the expected carbon emission reductions expected to occur under the draft regulation that you folks just approved recently from capping carbon from large power stations. In addition, according to a study by Welch International, total life cycle greenhouse gas emissions from the entire Atlantic Coast Pipeline are estimated at nearly 68 million metric tons annually, or the rough equivalent of 20 new coal-fired power plants. So you must consider that permitting this activity is adverse not only to the carbon reduction goals of the current administration, but also to the urgent action that IPCC's recent report describes that we need to combat climate change. It is clear that these greenhouse gas emissions have significant social costs. So I ask what evidence has been presented to you showing that the alleged economic benefits of the permitted activity outweigh these costs? Who has quantified these costs and benefits? And who bears the costs? Who receives the alleged economic benefits? Evidence from recent proceedings before the Virginia State Corporation Commission showed the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is not needed to supply existing or planned natural gas-fired power stations in Virginia. If the pipeline is unnecessary, it follows that the compressor station is unnecessary. So in your analysis of the social and economic value of permitting the Buckingham Compressor Station under the second element of 10.1-1307, I respectfully submit that you must find the activity unreasonable. Now finally, regarding site suitability, the third element that I wanted to discuss with you today, recall that under the code you're required to consider the suitability of the activity to the area in which it is located. Now, it's this authority, along with the Commonwealth Energy Policy, which requires you to consider the disproportionate impacts of the Buckingham Compressor Station on the majority African-American community of Union Hill. Commonwealth Energy Policy, which you have in front of you, states that it should be the policy of the Commonwealth to ensure that the development of new or expansion of existing energy resources or facilities does not have a disproportionate adverse impact on economically disadvantaged or minority communities. And then it goes on in subsection C to say, all agencies and political subdivisions of the Commonwealth in taking discretionary action with regard to energy issues shall recognize the elements of the Commonwealth energy policy and, where appropriate, shall act in a manner consistent therewith. Now, the law expressly states that this policy does not create any right action or cause of action, and the agencies of the Commonwealth shall not construe the energy policy to, quote, amend, repeal, or override any contrary provision of applicable law. However, there is no argument that this board, if it recognizes the Commonwealth energy policy and ensures environmental justice principles are complied with, would be acting contrary to any provision of applicable law. There's no command in the state air pollution control law that the board must approve all permit applications whose modeling and conditions indicate compliance with the NAAQS. This board is free to, and in fact must consider, under Title 10.1 and Title 67 of the Virginia Code, environmental justice principles in your analysis of the site suitability and reasonableness. According to a study conducted by the Friends of Buckingham and Dr. Washington Fjord, in accordance with EPA environmental justice guidelines, the Buckingham community within a 1.1 mile radius of the proposed compressor station is an environmental justice community where over 85% of households are African American, 33% are descendants of freedmen, and the numbers of elderly and very young are disproportionately higher than from other age groups. I respectfully submit to you that any analysis of the disproportionate adverse impacts of the Buckingham Compressor Station on the minority community of Union Hill must lead to a conclusion that the siting is not reasonable. In conclusion, this board's authority to deny a requested permit is express. Under the relevant regulations you have in front of you, you may approve the conditions, or disapprove permit applications. So you have at least 3 clear choices, and disapprove is one of them. This application fails at least 3 of the 4 elements of reasonableness laid out in 10.1 as I just described to you. First, without a comprehensive health impact assessment, we do not have enough information to determine whether the threat of injury to health is reasonable. Second, the estimated greenhouse gas emissions for the Buckingham Compressor Station should fail any cost-benefit analysis or analysis of the social and economic value of the activity. And third, the disproportionate impacts of the Buckingham Compressor Station on the low-income, minority community should bar you from determining if the site is suitable. Because the permit application is unreasonable under the analysis set out in Title 10.1, I respectfully ask you to disapprove the permit application for the Buckingham Compressor Station.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board. My name is Lou Zeller, and I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, which is a Virginia corporation also incorporated in North Carolina and other states. I have read the DEQ's response to the comments we made of September 11th of this year. They do not respond to the issues that we raised. In 2017, the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, in its chapter concerned for the new generation, filed an appeal in Buckingham County Circuit Court for judicial review of the case decision made by the Buckingham County Board of Supervisors approving a special use permit providing Atlantic Coast Pipeline with a special exemption for a 55,000 horsepower natural gas compressor station in Buckingham County. Simply stated, the special use permit was issued contrary to applicable Virginia law and regulations, including the state implementation plan. The special use permit is deficient in 3 ways, and they are interrelated. One is the The zoning, 2 is the noise levels, and 3 is environmental justice. First, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline requested a special use permit under the public utility exemption in the A1 zone ordinance. To qualify for this exemption, a facility must be a public utility. However, the company's air permit application expressly states that the Buckingham Compressor Station is a non-utility facility. Second, as approved by the Board of Supervisors, the permit would allow the compressor to generate between 55 to 60 decibels at the property line or any adjacent building. But the permit limits noise levels from the compressor only 90% of the time. Therefore, the compressor station could exceed the standard 10% of the time, that is 876 hours per year, which is more than 5 weeks a year for 24 hours a day. Moreover, the exceedances allowed by the permit during these 5 weeks would be subject to no noise limits whatsoever. As written, the permit is a threat to public health and places disproportionate impact on those living nearby. Third, Virginia statutes governing environmental energy development articulates support for environmental justice. One of the stated objectives is, quote, developing energy resources and facilities in a manner that does not impose a disproportionate adverse impact and economically disadvantaged for minority communities. This is Virginia Code Annex 67-101. The statute states that to achieve its objectives, it shall be the policy of the Commonwealth to, quote, ensure that development of new or expansion of existing energy resources or facilities does not have a disproportionate adverse impact on economically disadvantaged or minority communities. Buckingham County officials failed to follow the law. Buckingham County Board of Supervisors failed with respect to its statutory obligations to ensure that the energy facility does not have a disproportionate impact on Buckingham's Union Hill community. Members of the community are with us today in the room. I would like to ask that they now identify themselves. In January of this year, the trial court heard oral arguments. The judge issued an order granting Buckingham County's attorneys a motion to dismiss based on procedural matters of form and style only, not substance. However, Virginia trial court law and Virginia Code Section 801-275 requires the courts to disregard defects in pleadings so long as they do not affect the substance of the claims for which relief can be given. This has been fully embraced by the courts for 100 years. See Norfolk versus Sturgis, which is decided in 1915. Bottom line, these issues now are the subject matter of a petition for appeal to the Supreme Court of Virginia. Our brief was filed on July 17, 2018, and I have provided copies to you, which you now should have. Buckingham County Planning Commission heard evidence of environmental injustice from local residents and regional organizations during the public hearings on the compressor station. Although the information is correct, the oversight has been put before the county. It improperly approved granting of special use permit. Although information to correct the oversight has been put before the county, it improperly approved granting of the special use permit, The local governing body certification form is a legal form. It's a necessary basis for an air permit in Virginia. Under the present circumstances, a permit cannot be granted by Virginia DEQ. Virginia statutes and regulations allow the Air Pollution Control Board to revisit the matter. For example, it states no provision of this part or any permit issued thereon shall relieve any owner from the responsibility to comply with any existing zoning ordinances and regulations, provided, however, that such compliance does not relieve the board of its duty, that's this board, of Virginia Air Pollution Control Law to independently consider relevant facts and circumstances. This is from 9 Virginia Administrative Code 5-80-1230. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline LLC requested special use permit under the public utility exemption in the A1 ordinance. However, the compressor station proposed by Atlantic Coast Pipeline LLC is not a public utility. The company's air permit application to the state states that Buckingham's compressor station will not be subject to Federal Clean Air Act acid rain regulations because it will not sell electricity and therefore is a non-utility facility. This is in the application issue, the basis of this permit. This is a fatal flaw. Atlantic Coast Pipeline's air permit application to Virginia DEQ states one thing. The company's request for Buckingham County special use permit states the opposite. The local governing body certification form provides a legal basis for permit review by the state. The air permit is based on prevarication, a falsehood, a lie. The state cannot issue a permit until these issues are resolved. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate your commitment and your attention today. I'm Tom Hedwin. I work for electric and gas utilities in other states. I led a department that was responsible for obtaining state and federal permits for a variety of utility projects, both Virginia Valley energy projects. I support a comprehensive and objective permitting process. I also support the development of a modern energy system in Virginia. Your heads are filled with all sorts of details today, I'm sure, so let me take you on a little trip. We'll go in a balloon and a time machine, and we'll go back to what's the first stage of a regulatory process involving energy issues, and that's the assessment of need for the project. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about that here, but it's fundamental. In the assessment of need for this permit, you might be relying on the FERC process. It might interest you to know that FERC did not assess need in their process, even though they issued a certificate that made it sound like they did. They relied primarily on information from the applicant, but no independent evaluation of that information was accomplished by them. So let's go back in time to when the permit was first applied for. The justification for the pipeline was that nearly 80% of its capacity would be used by new gas-fired power plants that were proposed for Virginia and North Carolina. All of those plants for Virginia have been canceled. Dominion says they have no plans to build more. 4 of the 6 of the large gas-fired facilities that were proposed in North Carolina are gone. The remaining 2 are likely to succumb to the same types of forces that caused the cancellation of the other projects. That is, electricity use is not growing, even though our population is and our economy is. It's the opposite of what things were like in the 20th century. We are learning to produce more goods and services using less energy. So most of the rationale behind the pipeline is gone. Even if it weren't, even if all those plants needed to be provided with a supply of gas, the pipelines already in the ground can provide it. They're expanding in capacity by an amount greater than what the Atlantic Coast Pipeline provides. Just one addition to Transco that went into service just last month is providing capacity greater than what would be provided by the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So there are a few peaking units that are still in the plan. It was mentioned we might need them as we have more solar. Hot and very cold days, we use them, but they just run 5 to 10% of the time. They're usually located in the population centers, not on the pipeline corridor, so they would be served by existing pipelines. So the many sincere people who came forward and said, I support this project because we need it, I'm afraid of basing that opinion on old press releases and not on today's facts. Southeast Virginia is a little bit different situation, but the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is not the solution. New pipelines are terribly expensive. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline will add a premium of over 60% to the current cost of gas. That higher energy cost cannot be a catalyst for more economic development. It cannot be a producer of more jobs. Who is going to want to come to Virginia to pay more for their energy? The customers of our utilities, both in Virginia and North Carolina, will be asked to pay billions more for their energy costs over the next 20 years for a pipeline that will give them little benefit. There are better ways of doing this. When you go through a regulatory process, usually it comes down to balancing the benefits against the harm that's associated with it. Well, if the pipeline is not necessary in order for us to have all gas we need, and if it's going to cost us a whole lot, billions of dollars, we've already tipped the scale so the benefits are in the negative. Now, as you add the cost that we've heard about today, the harm for inequality, the harm for environmental justice, it is strongly tipped against approving this project. I ask you to consider that because it really has been an overlooked issue in the consideration of this project. I'm a utility guy. I'm concerned about the utilities. If they continue to increase the cost of energy to families and businesses throughout Virginia, with little benefit in return, it won't be good for them in the long run either. So we need to take an overview. You have an opportunity here, especially you all that are here because of your passion, your interest, your commitment, and your common sense. You're not so caught up in the political process by all what's going on behind the scenes. We need to do what's best for all of us. And this air quality permit is a chance to evaluate that. You have the legal authority to do it. You have the regulations that allow you to do it. Just put it all together. And I'm urging you to please go back to the beginning. Certainly focus on all that you've heard today. They're important issues, and you need to weigh and balance that. But a lot of what you've heard in support of this project is based on faulty information. The savings related to this came from a study Dominion funded that forgot to include the cost of using the pipeline. When it's put in, there is no savings. It's an extra expense. And that doesn't even include the 40% increase that was just announced. So this is something that is not good for all of our community. We can do better for our energy companies, better for their companies, their customers, and better for the people in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the board. My name is Alia, and I was born and raised in Virginia. I spent the first 6 years of my life living in Nelson County in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. My family, although not materially rich, was rich in our access to wilderness and to the natural world. During these young years, I spent most of my time adventuring with my siblings out in the woods, inspired by the strong trees, cleansed and soothed by the breeze, and mesmerized by the waters of the Rockfish River, which was on the edge of our property. This was a formative time for me, instilling in me a love for life in all of its forms. And this love of life is why I'm here today, speaking directly with you all about my concerns of the construction of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the compressor station. I'm deeply moved by the collective will that's mobilized to protect the shared lands of our Commonwealth. And as a white social worker and an anti-oppression facilitator, I too can't stay silent in the face of such misuse of power. It is clear to me that the decision to move forward with this project would be in direct opposition to my values of justice, equality, and inclusion. The completion of this project would not only position our state to become more dependent on the fossil fuel industry at a time when we know that that position of dependence is contributing directly to human-made climate change, and also is not the only technologies that we have for a robust economy and a future that would promote prosperity and abundance for all, but it also would disproportionately impact a predominantly African-American community. As a community largely comprised of people descended from enslaved ancestors, the Union Hill community has already been impacted intergenerationally by the cost of state-sanctioned injustices, the most blatant one, of course, being the institution of slavery. Such dehumanizing policies have been to the financial gains of a few over the wellness and the freedom and the livelihood of many others. The approval of this compressor station would again replicate this legacy of state-sanctioned racism. In the wake of the recent events in Charlottesville last year, it feels more important than ever that we shed light on the racial history of our communities across the Commonwealth in an effort to repair harm so we can move forward together to a brighter future. In weighing this decision, I ask each of you to consider, what is the world that we hope to leave for our future generations? If it's a world in which we've learned from the hubris of taking the earth without limit, and we've also learned of the harms of marginalizing already vulnerable communities, then I plead that you deny this permit. I respect each of you for taking your time and your livelihood and your energy to be on this board, and I ask that you look within your heart to know what we need and what the future needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Governess, oversight of Dominion. We know, you know too, that just be the state looking in the mirror. We want Dominion gone, we want the pipeline gone, we want the compressor station to disappear back into the violent imaginations of those who lust after power and profit, those for whom it would be so much more convenient if the people of Union Hill hadn't won their liberation from slavery. Descendants of freed slaves all along the pipeline want to make their voices known, including my friend whose family has lived in Hampton Roads since at least 1829. The pipeline is colonization reimagined. It opens old ancestral wounds. Her ancestors won't let her stay silent, so she's asking me to relay these words. We will not ignore that Dominion has, that the colonial so-called United States has, stolen this area from the Monotone, and the Powhatan, and the Meherrin, and the Chowanoke, and the Roanoke, and the Tuscarora, and the Lumbee, and the Cherokee, and the Cherokee, and the Pamunkey, and the Piscataway, and countless other indigenous nations who are still here. We know the compressor station would be an act of violence. We see it for the white supremacy it so manifestly and visibly is. We're here to bear witness to the bomb you have the chance to dismantle. If you don't worry, we will. Perhaps you don't hear the ticking, perhaps you think you'll be gone before the click. If we are terrified, it's because we are clear-sighted. If we are angry, it's because we deserve to be. If we are militant, it's because we must be. Others have brought you reason to deny the air permit. I hear them, I applaud them, and I hope you do too. I bring conviction. I know, and I don't use this phrase lightly, that there is no alternative. No pipelines, no racial terror, not here, not anywhere.
Good afternoon. My name is John Decker. I'm a resident of Union Hill Community, California. I am deeply concerned about this proposed compressor station and the toxin that will be emitted and the control of the toxin. And who will be in charge of the toxin that's emitted? And how it will be monitored? And in case there is a problem and excessive toxins will be emitted, how will the community be notified? There's a time when the community needs to be evacuated. How will they be notified? And who will be notifying the community? As of this day, the community have not received an evacuation plan, nor have there been any talk concerning the blast law. We are stewards. All of us are stewards of God's creation. And we are to protect the air, the water, and the ground. I, in particular, want to be a good steward. I want to leave the environment the way I found it. I do not believe there's adequate reason why we need to plunder God's earth for corporate gain. So I'm opposed to this proposed compressor station. I ask that you please consider denying this air permit. Thank you.
Lovelace. I'm a chemical engineer and a mother, and someone who believes clean air is a right, not a privilege. According to the EPA, non-attainment areas for criteria of pollution are defined as any area that does not meet or that contributes to an area that does not meet national ambient air quality standards. According to the EPA's data, Virginia is one of 23 states that has areas considered to be non-attainment for ozone. In other words, Virginia's air quality is already compromised and does not fully meet all of the national ambient air quality standards. That's especially so for marginalized communities. The DEQ's goal should be to prevent making air quality worse, as well as to reduce existing pollution. Why is the DEQ seeking approval for unnecessary infrastructure that will damage air quality further, with further disproportionate impacts to marginalized communities, especially when we have the renewable energy technology that renders pipelines obsolete? And when the recent IPCC report said we need to reduce emissions of methane, the primary component of dirty burning natural gas, by 35% by 2050. I also want to say that as a white person, I was born with the privilege of easier access to health care and emergency services, health and wellness centers, and all those things that Dominion is claiming they'll fund with the $5 million they just offered Union Hill to agree to have their environment destroyed by the ACP's compressor station. The fact that Dominion is stating that they'll make it so Union Hill has the same benefits that so many of us with more privilege already have, only if Union Hill agrees to have their environment and health damaged permanently, exemplifies environmental injustice. The environmental injustice that the DEQ and Dominion would like to fight. Those signs and justice would require that you deny this permit, and I ask that you do so.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm a retired public school teacher from Loudoun County, Virginia, Northern Virginia. My career was dedicated to prepare students for success in life, but I feel like we are cheating and deluding our children. How can we be successful in an unlivable world ravaged by climate change? You've been informed about the Dominion Energy application rife with omissions and falsifications. These omissions and falsifications created the illusion that legally required documents were not needed. On this basis alone, the current application should be disqualified and a new application complete with all required studies should be submitted anew. The air permit should not be granted, and all work on the ACP must be stopped until a new, complete, and accurate application is filed by Dominion Energy. You heard previous testimony that Massachusetts, concerned about the adverse health impacts, did not issue a compressor station permit until more studies were completed. You, the Virginia Air Board, has the same authority as Massachusetts. Virginians, especially the Union Hill community, deserve no less protection. Do the right thing, deny the air permit. It's the only moral choice. So that concluded my comments, but there was a previous resident from Loudoun County, Virginia, who lives near 3 compressor stations, and the picture she painted wasn't quite accurate. Dominion Power is not a good neighbor. They conducted an unannounced blowdown in September 2 years ago, and it caused the emergency 911 service to be overwhelmed, flooded with 1,000 calls from residents who were alarmed and scared about the blowdown. They chose to do the blowdown under adverse atmospheric conditions, which kept the gas close to the ground and everybody could smell it. Second, the community that's the compressor station is nested in, they don't want the public to know that the compressor station is in their community. They do not want their property values to go down, so they do not become very public about it. Third, Dominion Power seems to have blackmailed the community in a way, in this Loudoun County. They wanted to expand the compressor station, but there are also some safety features that they were going to put onto the compressor station, including sound barriers, only unless the compressor station expansion was approved. So there's so many instances when Dominion is not a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Power to deny this permit and to restore health to the people of Union Hill and Buckingham County. All of you know full well the very real impacts this compressor station will have on human lives, and so does Dominion. You all know full well that this compressor station will disproportionately affect communities of color. There is no reason to approve this permit, simply for profit and convenience sake. Stand with the people who build up our communities and protect them. Don't choose corporate greed over human lives. Put yourselves into the shoes of the people whose reality is going to be becoming breathing in poisonous gases for the rest of their lives. Don't approve this compressor station at the expense of other people. It is your best interest to listen to the marginalized voices who are being directly impacted by your decisions. It's your responsibility to do the right thing. Do your job. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to share the impact that the proposed compressor stations already have on the health of the residents. I'm Kenda Hanuman, and I'm in the Yogaville community, approximately 5 miles downwind of the 68 acres purchased for the 55,000 horsepower industrial facility. A standing room only meeting in my living room 4 years ago began the community's effort to protect our environment from the destructive effects of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I'd like to share several examples of the cost to the health of those landowners since the gathering in that room from the stress of dealing with the proposed ACP infrastructure. The first one is a veteran with severe PTSD. He sold his custom-built home and his property and moved across the country. The couple living next door to the vet, who are building their $400,000 to $600,000 log home, listed with a real estate agent and divorced. A dairy farmer, who you heard about tonight, less than a mile from the compressor site, filed a lawsuit against the Board of Supervisors and was dropped out of sight. Chad Oba, the chairperson for Friends of Buckingham and a Union Hill resident, has suffered recurring pneumonia and shingles. My neighbor, who was our reporter at that first meeting, sold her home and moved to Michigan. I sold my home and significantly downsized to allow myself the time and energy to volunteer in the often full-time work to protect our homes, health, and environment. We began meeting at the Union Hill Baptist Church and working with Pastor Paul Wilson and the congregation and community members, fostering friendships and support for their protection from the toxic threat of this huge compressor station in their neighborhood. As support from the NAACP and growing state and national attention brought the environmental justice issue of this compressor station location into the public awareness, Dominion contracted with the former Virginia Agricultural Secretary, a local landowner, to influence the community to accept money for local projects and stop opposing the compressor station. The result has been community division, disruption, and stress. Please do not allow these citizens to be sacrificed for corporate greed. I ask that you deny this air permit for ACP's Buckingham compressor station. Thank you.
By saying how disgusted I am with every person who has came up here and told blatant lies to everyone in this room, by even hinting that this compressor station won't have adverse effects on the Buckingham community. By approving this permit, you are allowing Dominion to build a ticking time bomb in the backyard of a community of descendants of freed slaves. Next year will mark the 400th year since the first enslaved person touched this soil. And for 400 years, the black community has been spat on, brutalized, and murdered. And this pipeline and compressor station is no different from that history of violence. Approving this permit is to say you don't care about the declining livability of this planet. Approving this permit is to say you don't care about any of our futures because you won't be the first ones to feel the pain of environmental devastation. By approving this permit, you are saying what every pro-pipeline Dominion crony hasn't said, which is that you hate the black community and you don't care if they die as long as you benefit. By approving this permit, the blood of the Buckingham community is on your hands. Every single one of you that say yes to this permit will be an accessory in the murder of an entire community. It's not a mystery why Dominion, a company headed by capitalist, white supremacist fascists, chose the Buckingham community to put this compressor station. They are trusting that you won't care about this community because it is predominantly black, lower income folks. Prove them wrong. Deny the permit, deny the pipeline, deny the continuation of white violence against the communities of color, and know that this is not me begging you, because I will lay my life and freedom on the line to defend the community of Buckingham from this pipeline, because they deserve to live free from extraction, free from violence. They deserve to live free.